Hi everyone, I'm Naomi Sunderland and I'm joining you today with Brigitta Scarfe to talk about creative and critical reflections on rights-centred community music engagement and research. We're here representing our colleagues in the Remedy Project, which is an Australian Research Council ongoing project examining First Nations music as a determinant of health. This presentation is also by our dear colleague Brydie-Leigh Bartleet, but she is in the air in transit as we speak, coming back to Australia from her 4-month Fulbright Fellowship in New York. But to get started, I'm going to just share a bit of the theory and thinking and the frameworks that underpin our national research project and the community music activities that go along with that. So the key protocols that underpin our research and really bring this strong underpinning of a rights-based First Nations-led approach to research and community music are the National Statement on Ethical Conduct in Human Research, which in Australia a lot of people are really familiar with. It's kind of like the mainstream framework. But more particularly, there's two other First Nations focused frameworks and protocols that we use, which are the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Code of Ethics for Research, which is incredibly focused on rights-based practice and anti-colonial practice, and the Australia Council Protocols for First Nations Cultural and Intellectual Property in the Arts, which are both really important. Outside of those specific research and arts focused frameworks, we draw heavily and regularly on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But just to underpin our presentation today and our stories that we're going to share, we wanted to draw your attention to a couple of articles in the United Nations Declaration. And one is Article 11, which talks about the right that Indigenous peoples have to practice and revitalise their cultural traditions and customs. And this includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures, such as archaeological and historical sites, visual and performing arts and literature, and so on. So I just get you to take a little screenshot of that in your mind. And then the second one, we really wanted to draw your attention to as a foundation for the stories and songs we want to share with you today is self-determination. Now, self-determination, as we've talked about in other meetings, community music meetings, is a fundamental right for all people, but it has special significance for First Nations people who have experienced profound evacuation of self-determination rights through the processes of colonisation. So one of the things we love about the document is that it states Indigenous peoples have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinct political, legal, economic, social and cultural institutions while retaining their right to participate fully, if they so choose, in the political, economic, social and cultural life of the state. So it's not an either or, it's not a forced assimilation situation. It's that their rights sit across those cultural traditions and inheritances. So our key question that we are exploring as a team and we're inviting you to join us in is how can and does community music practice and research uphold those rights? So I'm going to give you a quick example of some work that I've done, and then Brigitte is going to share some stories as well, and we're going to end with some provocation questions for us all to consider going forward. So some of you would know already that the pilot project for the Remedy project was conducted in Vanuatu in Australia, and it was called the Songs of Self-Determination Project. And part of that work was Phil Graham and I went to remote Modelava, remote Vanuatu, and facilitated some songwriting as part of an invitation to a community-run festival. And just to give you an example, the whole songwriting process and the whole project was around human rights, First Nations human rights, and in particular, the right of self-determination. So our songwriting prompts there on the right, and they were simple things, not so simple, but simple questions. What do you want to say? Who do you want to say it to? So who are the audiences? In what languages do you want to say it? And with what words, music, or sounds do you want to say it? And then once we worked out what they wanted to write about, which was about life on that island, and the strengths of that island, we moved into questions like really trauma-informed questions and mindful questions like what does it feel like to be here? What are the sights, sounds, tastes, and so on. So I'm going to give you a little sneak preview of the song that resulted from that process.
So remember, don't forget me. I am strong, I am free. I'll be with you when you need me. What a lover come to be. Sometimes you need direction. Sometimes you need a love. Somewhere you know the stranger, and everywhere is home. So remember, don't forget me. I am strong, I am free. I'll be with you when you need me. What a lover unto me.
That was one of the most joyous community music activities I've ever been involved in. And I have to say that when I feel like rights are being upheld and when people are leading and flourishing and open in that way that music making felt, there's a great synergy. Like there's a beautiful synergy between it feels so good when things are working so well from that really grassroots approach that we love in community music. So, but that's just one example, and doesn't always feel like that. So I'm going to hand over to Brigitta, and she's going to share some of her stories as well.
Thanks, Naomi. Hi, everyone. As Naomi mentioned, I'm coming to you from Derby, which is Noongar Wadawar country. I've been here for just over a year now, and I'm doing my PhD, focusing on Aboriginal women's music, which is not as strong as the men's music up here. And as part of my research, I was approached by members of the community to start a choir. And this is something that I guess I knew I had the skills for, but I'd never actually done it before. So it was very much a process of figuring out how to do that. And it's been really generative for making connections that are relevant to my research, but it's also been a response to the priorities of the community. And I guess I also want to talk about some of the practicalities of ensuring that the community musicking practice of the choir enshrines those values of self-determination and human rights. And I have a few stories that I could share of the challenges that I've faced in trying to do that. And one of the big things that I've had to face is letting go of my own need for perfection as someone who's been Western music educated, coming into a community musicking space and trying to find a shared language that we can all participate in music with. For example, one of our accompanists, very generous accompanists, a local Aboriginal man, he plays keyboard and he plays everything in C, but he's what do you call it? Configured his keyboard to change keys electronically, and so it's been quite difficult for me if I want him to play, for example, a B7 instead of a D. I can't say that. So there's a lot of just letting things sort of be imperfect because the choir itself has expressed how much they love his participation, and it really energizes the group when he's accompanying us.
But across our really quite diverse experiences, Brigitta and I came up with some questions for reflection and provocation about this idea that we can provoke good trouble in our research and our community music practice as part of the Remedy project and outside it. And these are the ones we would like to leave you with and perhaps discuss a bit more as a group today. The first one is, what are the shared knowledges required to achieve right-centered community music experiences and research? So the shared knowledges, and some of that came out in Brigitta's examples, like really what are the minimum requirements? And also in the frameworks that I shared, are they examples of minimum knowledges? Have you ever been involved in a community music or research experience that you felt was truly self-determined by the target population or group? So this can be a really sobering question to reflect on. If you have been involved in a truly self-determined experience, what did that look, sound, and feel like for you? What are our complexities as workers, as practitioners, professionals, and researchers of staying with the trouble? Not just looking for trouble, but sticking around. Um, and the trouble and complexity of promoting rights-centered community music and research. What are the complexities of staying with it for each of us? Is there such a thing as too much freedom in community music activities? Because if we're really seeking self-determination and First Nations leadership, I think all of us have experienced that can sometimes be a bit clumsy, and how much is too much input from participants, and at which point do facilitators and other leaders need to guide and structure the experiences and the processes? So those are just some of the questions that are emerging for us. We'd love to talk to you more and hope that we've been able to share at least some good food for provoking good trouble. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.